I never should have come home early. But the deal in Chicago wrapped up faster than expected, and I thought surprising my wife with dinner and flowers would be a good way to break up the monotony of our routine. Turns out I was the one in for a surprise. The second I stepped into the house, I knew something was wrong. The living room lights were dimmed. A half-empty bottle of wine sat on the coffee table, and two glasses, rested beside it. A pair of men's dress shoes, not mine, were haphazardly kicked off near the couch. My stomach twisted. Then I heard it. A low chuckle. A man's voice. My brother's voice. I followed the sound, each step like walking into a nightmare. The bedroom door was ajar, candlelight flickering inside. My pulse pounded in my ears as I pushed it open. There they were. My wife, my brother, tangled together in our bed, their laughter vanishing the moment they saw me. For a split second, we all just froze. Then she gasped, yanking the sheets around her as if that would erase what I'd just seen. My brother, ever the arrogant bastard, simply leaned back against the headboard and smirked. "Well," he said, completely unfazed. "Guess the trip ended early." Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. I had always thought betrayal would come with yelling, with chaos, with an explosion of rage. But all I felt was an eerie, hollow stillness, like my entire world had just been gutted. My wife, no, Candace, started stammering, her voice laced with fake panic. "Wait, it's not what it looks like." I laughed, actually laughed. "Not what it looks like. Candace, you're literally in bed with my brother." My brother, Mason, stretched lazily, as if this were just another morning. "No point lying now, Candy. He caught us." Candy, the nickname I once loved hearing from my own lips, now sounded disgusting coming from his. My hands clenched into fists, but I didn't trust myself to do anything yet. I had to get out, had to clear my head. If I stayed, I might do something I'd regret. So I turned and walked out. But before I left the room, Mason called after me. "Hey man, might want to call your lawyer." I stopped dead in my tracks. "She's already got the divorce papers drawn up," he said casually, reaching for the wine bottle. "Figured you'd take the hint sooner or later." A cold sweat prickled my skin. My wife cheating was one thing, but her already preparing to leave and my own brother knowing about it before me? That meant this wasn't just an affair. This was planned. I left the house without another word. I needed to find out just how deep this betrayal ran. And then, when the time was right, I'd burn their world to the ground. I didn't sleep that night. My mind kept replaying Mason's smug smirk, the way Candace clutched the sheets as if that would somehow erase the scene I'd walked into. And then the divorce papers, prepared before I even knew. This wasn't just betrayal. This was a setup. By morning, I was done feeling sorry for myself. I had work to do. First, I needed intel. I wasn't about to walk into this blind. Candace was a financial consultant. She knew how to hide money, how to manipulate numbers. And Mason? That bastard had always been a step ahead. Even when we were kids. He was the golden boy, the one who charmed his way out of every bad situation, while I took the fall. But this time, I wasn't going to be the fool. I pulled into the parking lot of Kessler and Associates at 8 a.m. sharp. David Kessler didn't waste time with pleasantries. "You need leverage," he said after I filled him in. "If she's been planning this, she's already ahead of you. Assets, investments, any joint accounts, you need to start looking." I nodded. "And Mason?" David leaned back, studying me. "Your brother's playing a long game here. The question is, how long has this been going on?" That was the million-dollar question. How long had Candace and Mason been plotting behind my back? And more importantly, how far were they willing to go? I left David's office with one goal in mind: find out everything. Candace had always been careful, but she had one weakness: control. She liked to micromanage everything. If she was moving money around, she would have left a paper trail. I drove back to the house, waiting until I was sure she had left for work. The house felt different now. Like a stranger's. I went straight to her office, pristine, organized, just like her. I found the locked drawer almost immediately. She thought she was so clever, hiding it, But Candace had a habit of taping keys underneath shelves. Quick search and bingo. I slid the key into the lock and pulled the drawer open. What I found inside made my blood turn to ice. Bank statements, investment transfers, a second life unfolding on paper. There were wire transfers to accounts I didn't recognize, a payment to a private investigator. But the worst part? A life insurance policy. In my name, signed a month ago, for $2 million. I sat back, exhaling slowly. This wasn't just about taking everything. Candace and Mason weren't just trying to ruin me. They were planning to erase me. The game had just changed. And now, it was my turn to play dirty. I stared at the life insurance policy in my name, my hands tightening into fists. Candace had forged my signature. She wasn't just divorcing me. She was planning to cash out on me. And Mason? He was in on it. I needed proof. Real proof. My first stop was the bank. If Candace had been shifting money, she would have needed a paper trail. The bank manager, a guy named Tom Hastings, had known me for years. He hesitated at first, but I leaned in. Tom, I need to see any large withdrawals or account changes Candace has made in the last 6 months. Legally, I can't. I slid my phone across the desk, showing him a picture of the forged life insurance policy. His face paled. Give me 5 minutes. I waited, every second feeling like a lifetime. When he came back, his expression was grim. She's been moving money, all right, he said, handing me a printout. 10,000 here, 20 there. But last month, a full 100 grand. Transferred to an offshore account. I exhaled slowly. This wasn't a messy affair. This was a premeditated hit job. And they weren't just planning to take everything. They were planning to disappear with it. I left the bank with a clear mission. Expose them before they made their next move. I needed eyes on Candace. On Mason. On everything. And I knew just the guy to help me. Frankie Morales. Frankie was a private investigator I'd used before when a former business partner tried to screw me over. He was discreet, ruthless, and paranoid as hell. Exactly what I needed. I met him at a rundown diner, sliding the bank documents across the table. Frankie whistled low. Damn, your wife's a real piece of work. Can you track the offshore account? I asked. Maybe, he said. But that's not what worries me. He tapped the life insurance policy. These things don't pay out if the policyholder dies under suspicious circumstances. I frowned. What are you saying? Frankie leaned in. If she's smart, she wouldn't try anything obvious. No car accidents. No break-ins. No violence. The realization hit me like a freight train. Candace wasn't planning to have me killed. She was planning to set me up. A fraud case. A financial scandal. A criminal charge that would land me behind bars or worse on the run. That's why she had a private investigator on me. She was building a case. Frankie sat back, shaking his head. You need to get ahead of this, man. Before she makes her move. I exhaled, my mind racing. I wasn't just going to get ahead of it. I was going to end it. On my terms. That night, I played the role of the broken husband perfectly. I called Candace. Let my voice shake a little. Told her I was sorry for storming out. That I just needed time to think. She bought it. Hook, line, and sinker. I could almost hear the smugness in her voice. You should come home, she purred. We need to talk. Not yet, sweetheart. First, I needed to deal with Mason. I found him at a bar downtown. Exactly where I expected. Sitting in a VIP booth, a whiskey in hand, acting like he owned the place. I slid into the seat across from him. He smirked. Well, the man of the hour. I didn't speak, just took a sip of my drink. Mason chuckled. You know, I gotta admit, I thought you'd put up more of a fight. But hey, you always were slow on the draw. I met his gaze, my expression unreadable. You think you've won? I asked, my voice quiet. He shrugged. You're out. Candace and I? We're in. And soon enough you'll be, well, let's just say, out of the picture. I let the words hang between us. Then I leaned in. You know what's funny? I said, smirking. Candace thinks you are her ticket out of this marriage. Mason frowned slightly. But what do you think she'll do when she finds out about your other girlfriend? His smirk disappeared. Bingo. I stood up, throwing cash on the table. See you around, Mason. I walked away, feeling his eyes burning into my back. I wanted him to be paranoid. I wanted him to wonder what I knew, because soon, I was going to make Candace's entire plan implode. And neither of them would see it coming. Mason had always been cocky. He thought he was untouchable, that he could snake his way into my life, into my marriage, and walk away unscathed. But now he was sweating, because I had planted a seed. He didn't know what I knew, but he knew it was something. And men like Mason, they don't handle uncertainty well. I just had to push him over the edge. I spent the next 2 days watching. I wanted to see if Mason would slip up, and he did. He started getting paranoid, checking his phone constantly, snapping at bartenders when they took too long with his drink, and, best of all, sneaking around. Candace thought she had him wrapped around her finger. But Mason, he had a side piece, and I was going to use her to blow up their entire plan. Her name was Lena Carter, a bottle blonde with a sharp temper and an even sharper need for money. She worked as a hostess at one of the clubs Mason frequented. I'd seen them together once or twice, but I never cared until now. I approached her at the club, sliding into the barstool next to her. She glanced over, uninterested, until I pulled out my phone and flashed a picture of her and Mason. She stiffened. Who the hell are you? Just someone who knows Mason likes to spread the wealth. I took a sip of my drink. Tell me something, Lena. Has he been good to you? Her jaw clenched. He's an asshole. Figured. I swirled my whiskey. You want revenge? She hesitated, eyeing me. What kind of revenge? I pulled out a small envelope and slid it across the bar. Inside is everything you need to burn Mason down, I said smoothly. Text messages, financial transactions, and a little surprise for his loving girlfriend. She opened it, scanning the contents. Her eyes widened. Wait, Candace doesn't know. Not yet, I said, grinning. But she will. In front of everyone. Lena smirked. Damn. I like you. I clinked my glass against hers. Then let's give them a show. The perfect opportunity came 3 nights later. Candace and Mason were hosting a charity gala. Classic. She wanted to play the perfect wife one last time before shocking the world with our divorce. She didn't know the real shock was about to be hers. The venue was packed with her high society friends. Bankers, lawyers, influencers, all sipping champagne and faking smiles. Candace floated through the crowd like a queen, draped in an expensive emerald green dress I had bought her years ago. Mason stood by her side, the ever-doting supportive man, pretending he hadn't been screwing her over too. Then Lena walked in. Every head turned. She was wearing red. Bold, confident, dangerous. I watched from the bar as she made her way through the crowd, walking straight to Candace. Mason saw her first. His face drained of color. Lena smiled at Candace sweetly. You must be Candace. It's so nice to finally meet you, she said, her voice dripping with syrup-laced venom. Candace, ever the actress, smiled back. Oh, have we met? Not exactly, Lena said. But we have so much in common. Candace's eyes narrowed. Excuse me? Lena pulled out her phone. Like this text Mason sent me last week. You know, right before he came over to my place. Silence. Candace stiffened, her knuckles whitening around her champagne glass. The crowd started whispering. Lena swiped again. Oh, and this bank transfer? The one he made to my account? That was nice of him. Candace looked at Mason, who was now visibly sweating. Lena grinned. But you know what my favorite part is? She turned her phone around, showing a very explicit video of Mason with her. The crowd gasped. Candace's face collapsed. My brother, the cocky bastard who thought he was untouchable, had just been humiliated in front of the entire city. Lena leaned in close, lowering her voice just enough for Candace to hear. I hope you enjoy being the other woman. Then she walked away, leaving Candace standing shell-shocked, her world imploding around her. And me? I just stood at the bar, sipping my drink, enjoying the fireworks. But I wasn't done yet. Candace had played her hand. Now it was time to play mine. I pulled out my phone and sent the final text to my lawyer. One simple message. Drop the bomb. Because while Candace was too busy dealing with her public humiliation, she had no idea that her entire financial empire was about to come crashing down. I watched Candace's face drain of color. Her lips slightly parted as the reality of what just happened crashed down on her. She had spent months, maybe years orchestrating the perfect betrayal, plotting my downfall with Mason, securing the divorce papers before I even knew about the affair, lining up the financials to leave me with nothing. And yet, here she was, blindsided, exposed, humiliated. She had expected to walk away clean, victorious. Instead, she was standing in the middle of her own battlefield, bleeding out. And I wasn't done yet. Candace turned to Mason, her voice low and sharp. Tell me this isn't real. Mason swallowed hard. He tried to play it off, but his confidence was gone. The crowd was still watching, whispering, judging. That's when I stepped forward. What's wrong, Candy? I said, mocking her old nickname. You look like you've seen a ghost. She flinched. That was new. Candace had always been so damn composed. The queen of control. But right now, she had none. I pulled out my phone. You know, you were so meticulous planning this whole thing. The divorce, the offshore accounts, the secret wire transfers. Mason's head snapped toward her. What wire transfers? Candace stiffened. Oh, Mason, you dumb bastard. I smirked. She didn't tell you? Oh man. And here I thought you two were in this together. Turns out, Candace was planning her next move before this one even played out. Mason turned to her. Tell me he's lying. Candace opened her mouth, hesitated. That half-second of hesitation was all Mason needed. You conniving little. Relax, Mason. I interrupted. We can all be civil here. After all, she did love you. I paused, then added, well, up until she didn't. That's when I dropped the bomb. I hit send on a text to David Kessler, my lawyer. 1 second later, a loud ding echoed across the gala speakers. The sound of every phone in the room getting an email. Candace's email. Her private emails. Leaked. Directly from her own financial consultant's office. People froze. Guests pulled out their phones. Scanned. Reacted. Then the whispers started. Oh my God. She was planning to. This is insane. Candace snatched her phone, desperation on her face. Her hands shook as she opened her inbox. The files contained everything. Proof of fraudulent transactions moving my assets into offshore accounts under fake business entities. A hidden prenup loophole where she manipulated clauses to ensure I lost more than I legally should. Her own private messages to a criminal attorney, just in case she needed to frame me for financial misconduct if I resisted the divorce. The life insurance policy, signed with a forged signature. And the worst part? She was planning to leave Mason, too. Mason had been glaring at Candace, but when he scrolled down to one particular email, his entire body went rigid. I already knew which one he was reading, because I saved it for last. A drafted email Candace wrote to a real estate agent.
Nancy.
Just confirming that we'll be moving forward with the Hamptons property. Mason thinks we're moving in together, but he's a temporary distraction. Once the assets transfer to my name, I'll be selling and relocating. No need to include Mason on anything. He won't be in the picture for long. I could feel Mason's rage. His hands clenched into fists. You lying, manipulative. Candace tried to reach for him. Mason, listen. I can explain. Crack. Mason's fist slammed into the champagne tower behind them, shattering glass everywhere. The crowd gasped. 2 security guards rushed forward to keep him from launching at her. And Candace? For the first time in her life, she looked terrified. I leaned into Candace's ear. You tried to destroy me, I whispered. But you got greedy. And now, you have nothing. She turned to me, her eyes burning with hatred. You set me up. I grinned.
No, sweetheart.
I just let you set yourself up. Her breath shuddered. I stepped back, just as David Kessler and a team of attorneys walked through the ballroom doors. Ladies and gentlemen, David announced, holding up a legal document. This is a court-approved emergency order to freeze all of Candace Lawson's assets, pending investigation of fraud and embezzlement. Candace staggered. What? Your financial records were flagged earlier today, David continued, smiling like a shark. We have forensic accountants reviewing every transaction you've made in the last 3 years. But that's impossible, she whispered. I smirked. Funny thing about greed, Candy. It makes you sloppy. Her eyes darted toward Mason, but he was gone. Slipped out while she was distracted. He wasn't gonna fight for her. Not anymore. Candace stood there, shaking, trapped in the wreckage of her own making. Broke, exposed, abandoned. And the best part? I wasn't done yet. Candace was finished. Her hands trembled as she clutched her phone, frantically scrolling through her emails, her legal accounts, her now frozen assets, looking for an escape, for some last-second miracle. But there was nothing left to save her. The whispers around the gala turned into outright murmurs. People who once adored her, the socialites, the investors, the influencers she manipulated, were backing away like she was contagious. Her world wasn't just falling apart. It was burning to the ground. And I was the one who lit the match. Then came the final blow. A voice rang out from the ballroom doors. Candace Lawson? She turned toward the sound, her face pale. 2 uniformed officers stood at the entrance. The moment stretched forever. Ms. Lawson, we need you to come with us, one officer said, stepping forward. You're under investigation for fraud, embezzlement, and forgery. We strongly advise you to comply. Candace stumbled back. No, this isn't real. She turned to me, her face contorted with hatred and desperation. You did this to me, she whispered. I shrugged. You did this to yourself. Then I leaned in, my voice low. And the best part? Mason left you, your money's gone. And now? You're alone. Her breathing came in shaky gasps. No, she muttered again, but her voice was breaking. She knew. It was over. The officers stepped forward, grabbing her wrists. Candace Lawson, you're under arrest. That's when she finally snapped. She screamed and lunged at me, nails outstretched, her perfectly manicured image shattered. You think you've won? She shrieked. I just stepped back, watching with amusement as she was yanked away by the officers. You think this is over? She kept screaming as they dragged her away. I'll come back from this. The doors slammed shut. Silence. Then scattered applause. I turned, meeting the eyes of every single guest in that room. The show was over. Candace Lawson? She was done. The next few weeks were a storm of destruction. For Candace, not me. Her fraud case went public. Every major news outlet picked it up. She became a scandal, a cautionary tale, a name people spat instead of admired. She lost everything. The accounts were seized, the assets liquidated, the fake companies dissolved. Her entire empire crumbled overnight. Mason disappeared. The last I heard, he skipped town, probably off scamming his next victim. He didn't even have the balls to face me after what happened. And me? I walked away clean. I won the divorce case fully. Candace had no claim to my assets, no right to alimony. She walked away with nothing but a criminal record and a ruined reputation. For the first time in years, I was free. After some years, it's been 5 years since Candace was arrested. And my life? Let's just say I came out on top. Financially, I rebuilt. I learned from my mistakes, made smarter investments, and now, I'm wealthier than I ever was. Mentally, I'm at peace. No more walking on eggshells, no more dealing with manipulation. I know who I am now. Personally, well, I moved on. Found someone who actually values me. Someone who doesn't see me as a stepping stone, but as a man. And Candace? She got out of prison last year. No money, no friends, no power. Last I heard, she was working at a small accounting firm, barely making ends meet. The queen who once ruled the social elite, reduced to nothing. I saw her once by accident, at a cafe. She looked tired, hollow. I didn't say anything. I just smiled, because I didn't need revenge anymore. I'd already won. Some betrayals break you, some rebuild you, and sometimes, the best revenge is letting them live with their own failure.